One of the things we're going to be doing a little bit differently in our podcast this year is we really want to focus and work with leaders to look at their passions around their business, around their people, around their KPIs, and their strategy and what it is that they want to action. This is the Passion Institute podcast, the go-to place for entrepreneurs and business leaders who want to ignite passion, inspire action, and create a meaningful impact in the world. I'm Shivani Gupta, and each episode we will dive into transformative ideas, game-changing strategies, and stories of innovation from the most dynamic minds in business. Whether you're scaling a company or leading a movement, this is where inspiration meets action. Let's spark new ideas, fuel your ambition, and uncover the secrets to lasting success. This is the Passion Institute podcast, where impact starts with passion. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2025 and to our rebranded the Passion Institute podcast. One of the things we're going to be doing a little bit differently in our podcast this year is we really want to focus and work with leaders to look at their passions around their business, around their people, around their KPIs, and their strategy and what it is that they want to action. So seeing that it's the beginning of the year, and many of you hopefully have started to reflect on what worked for you last year, perhaps what didn't work for you. One of the key tools that I use myself and I use with a lot of our clients is what we call the keep, stop, start. Now, you might have come across a similar tool around that, but what this essentially says is, what are the things that you did really well as a business leader last year that you want to continue to do this year in 2025? And sometimes what we want to do is we want to cut and paste that. And we want to say, hey, that worked really well. Let's not fix something that isn't broken. And in 2025, we want to keep those. And I want you to think about behaviors that you might have as a leader. I want you to think about some of the strategies or meetings that you ran. Think about some of the biggest stuff. And maybe it was some of the little stuff that you rinsed and repeated constantly. And so think about what it is that you want to keep for this year. The second part is stop, and this is where I find most leaders struggle with it, because it's not about stopping something that you added no value to. It's more about looking at it from the perspective that if you did that or didn't do that in 2025 compared to last year, that your time will be freed up, and perhaps the value that it added was not as much, or you did a bit of an experiment with something and it didn't quite work. I know when I reflected on this recently, there's 3 or 4 different projects that I launched last year, which was a real year of experimentation for me. I wanted to trial a few different things that I know which ones I'm going to go deeper into in 2025, and a couple of things that I need to let go. And the third part of Keep, Stop, Start is the start bit. What is it that you wanted to start or you want to start this year? Again, think about behaviors, think about meeting, think about structure in terms of what it is that you want to do. So today's podcast, I really want to dedicate to why I believe that business leaders need to focus on passion projects, but also when we talk about passion projects, the discipline of having the KPIs that go underneath it. So it's important to balance the passion, but also the metrics behind the passion. And most people will call them KPIs or key performance indicators. They're the indicators that we know will tell us whether we're moving in the right direction or in the wrong direction. And so they're really important for that long-term success. So firstly, let's talk about passion projects. How do we define what a passion project is? Well, these are projects and initiatives that are fueled from your personal interest or alignment with what is really for your company's mission. So your company's mission might be to the best IT provider in the country or in the state or even globally, for example. And so what are the passion projects that we might be looking at? But particularly you might be looking at how you might incorporate AI into that. And one of the things what we want to do when it comes to passion projects, we know that when we implement them, sometimes we don't see that immediate return. We don't see that return on investment or ROI on it straight away. But we know that when we have some of those passion projects that are aligned with our strategy, that it can actually drive innovation. We can also look at it to drive employee engagement, and we can look at how it is that we can actually drive the culture and the growth of that culture within our business. KPIs, I know most of you listening will know that, but I just want to make sure if we're from different countries listening to this, that KPIs are basically the measure that is tied to that business objective. So we just want to make sure that people are accountable. You want to make sure that people are productive. And when they're working with that, again, that KPI is in alignment with hopefully the broader strategy that it is that you're putting that in. And why do we need both? Well, KPIs keep us grounded. They make sure that it's that measurable success. They make sure that we have got the drive to support our company if we're talking to our employees or our executives or our board or investors, whoever it is that we're talking to, or our key stakeholders in our business, that we can say to them, this has gone up, this has gone down. The KPI is essentially moving in the right direction. So they're the markers that we need to be able to have. But however, the passion projects are often there to be able to inspire that creativity. We want to be able to emotionally connect with our people. And when we combine them, I believe that we end up with what I believe is called balanced leadership. And it's balanced leadership approach around that. So we want to have some of the out-of-the-box thinking. For example, Google had this famous 20% time initiative. And one of the things that they did was that by having this 20% time around having a look at certain initiatives, this is where Google actually came up with Gmail, it came up with Google Maps, and a bunch of other initiatives. And that's just in one company. But I wanted to use an example that is bigger. For more medium-sized companies, when we're working with leaders, one of the things that you want to do is to be able to say, when we have that in those passion projects, what are some of the things that are going to be able to come out of that? I also wanted to talk about the fact that KPIs provide that structure, because passion drives some of that creativity, but we want to have the fact that, the KPIs align with the objectives. They also just almost become as a bit of a guardrail to make sure that we don't have passion projects that are going and veering off course, and they keep them aligned in terms of what you are actually doing. How do we engage our employees through passion? Well, it's really important when we're talking about passion projects that we engage our people, we make sure that they understand that when they're working on there and they're thriving on it, that they're working on things that are meaningful, not only to the business, but also links in to what it is. And when we call them things like passion projects, and we get engagement and buy-in from our people, one of the things we can also do is improve our morale. We can improve our retention, we can improve the motivation, and what we then again want to do is get those metrics working for us. And when it comes to our accountability, we want to make sure that all our initiatives, including our passion projects, have that impact that we want it to have. We want accountability, and you want to have one particular person that might be responsible, even though you might have, let's say, 9 or 10 people working on that particular project, but you want to have one person's name next to that. So the visibility of how that accountability is going, the buck does stop with that one person that would be able to provide us there. We also want to create this culture around the fact that people know that when they're measuring the KPIs around the passion projects, there's this continuous growth cycle. I sit on one particular volunteer board, and again, we have this 80-20 rule that we want to have 80% of our effort going into what projects that are already existing that work, but 20% of them are going to be those change, or as I talked about, those passion projects. So we want to make sure that, that percentage is, unless you're a brand new company and you're really looking at innovation, that you've got that percentage more skewed towards the existing projects and how they actually work. My experience has been that when a business leader actually embraces both the passion projects as well as the KPIs and make sure that they're measured, they get better buy-in, they get better engagement, and that passion connects to the deeper purpose of what it is that the business is trying to achieve. And we want to make sure that you are able to measure them, and as we talk about, the results speak for themselves. And if those results aren't there, then we don't repeat that, whether it's into the next quarter or into the next year. I just want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for staying with this particular podcast. And as it does its next iteration, into really helping leaders look at the passions that they do, how they incorporate them, how they lead with passion, how they get those results. I just really appreciate you being able to tune in. And I look forward to bringing you more on the Passion Institute podcast. If you've got any ideas, or if you'd like to be a guest on our particular podcast, and you can share with us as a leader, what are some of the initiatives and strategies and changes that you're making in your business, we would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us on the Passion Institute podcast. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to maybe take some action or helped you see a business in your new light, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us present a great show. Leave a review and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and leaders who also are ready to make an impact. Remember, passion is the fuel for greatness, and every step you take brings you closer to your vision. Keep dreaming big, leading with purpose, and making waves in the world. Until next time, stay passionate, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy. This is your host, Shivani, and signing on from the Passion Institute podcast. See you soon.